The conversation stopped so abruptly that Ellen's sound engineer thought the audio system had malfunctioned. One moment, Ellen DeGeneres was interviewing a celebrity chef about their new cookbook, her audience of 300 people enjoying the light-hearted cooking demonstration. The next moment, complete silence as a young woman in the front row stood up and said 9 words that would change everything. Being deaf saved a child's life. I saw what others missed. The studio fell into stunned quiet. Ellen's smile faded as she processed what she'd just heard, her wireless microphone suddenly feeling heavy in her hand. It was Wednesday afternoon at the Warner Bros. Studios in Burbank. Ellen's Unsung Heroes segment was being taped. The set decorated with symbols of courage and community service. The energy had been exactly what producers expected: inspiring, uplifting, filled with stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But sitting in the front row, wearing a simple navy blue dress and unconsciously using sign language while she spoke, was someone whose presence would transform this ordinary Wednesday into television history. 24-year-old Jessica Chen had been invited as part of a segment celebrating everyday heroes who had made a difference in their communities. What Ellen didn't know was that Jessica carried a story that would stop her show and create the most powerful moment about perception, courage, and the hidden strengths that society often overlooks. Jessica was born profoundly deaf, a petite woman with shoulder-length black hair and dark eyes that seemed to notice everything around her. She wore small hearing aids that helped amplify some sound, but she relied primarily on lip reading and sign language to communicate. Around her neck hung a small silver pendant shaped like hands forming the sign for love. The show had progressed normally through its opening segments. Ellen danced through the audience with her characteristic energy, celebrating stories of people who had gone above and beyond to help others. She interviewed the celebrity chef, creating moments of lightness that balanced the more serious segments about heroism and community service. During the Unsung Heroes segment, Ellen had been highlighting people who had shown remarkable courage in unexpected circumstances. She'd spoken with several community members about their acts of service, sharing stories that showcased the best of human nature. The atmosphere was celebratory and encouraging, honoring those who made their communities safer and stronger. Then Ellen noticed something that made her pause mid-sentence. While other audience members were listening and responding verbally, Jessica was watching everything with an intensity that seemed almost supernatural. Her eyes moved constantly, taking in facial expressions, body language, and lip movements with the kind of focus that suggested she was reading the room in ways others couldn't. "I'm sorry," Ellen said, approaching Jessica's row with curiosity. "I couldn't help but notice how intently you're watching everything. You seem to see things that others might miss." Jessica looked up at Ellen with eyes that carried both strength and vulnerability. She began to sign as she spoke, her hands moving gracefully as she formed words both audibly and visually. "I'm Jessica Chen, and I've been deaf since birth," she said, her speech slightly different but perfectly clear. "I read lips and watch people because that's how I understand the world. Sometimes being different means you notice things that others don't." The studio began to quiet as audience members sensed they were about to witness something significant. Ellen felt drawn to learn more about this young woman, whose disability seemed to have become a unique strength. "Jessica, you mentioned that being deaf saved a child's life," Ellen said gently. "Can you tell us what happened?" Jessica took a breath, her hands continuing to sign as she spoke. "3 months ago, I was working my shift as a server at Enzo's restaurant downtown. I've worked there for 2 years, and most customers don't realize I'm deaf because I've gotten very good at reading lips and understanding what people need." Ellen knelt down to Jessica's level, bringing herself into this young woman's world with the compassion that had defined her career. "That night, I was serving a table of 4 adults in a corner booth," Jessica continued. "They seemed nervous, kept looking around, speaking in low voices. Because I read lips instead of just hearing words, I could see exactly what they were saying, even though they thought they were being quiet and secretive. The cameras instinctively moved closer, understanding they were capturing something extraordinary." Ellen felt her chest tighten as she prepared to hear about something serious. "They were planning to kidnap a little girl," Jessica said, her voice steady despite the gravity of what she was sharing. "They had photos of her, knew her school schedule, talked about where to grab her and how much ransom money to demand. They thought no one could hear them because they were whispering, but I could see every word on their lips. The silence in the studio was now complete. Ellen looked around at her audience, all hanging on every word of this incredible story of vigilance and courage. "What did you do?" Ellen asked, though she wasn't sure she was prepared for the answer. "I memorized everything," Jessica replied. "The child's name was Sophie Martinez. She was 8 years old, went to Lincoln Elementary. They planned to take her the next morning at 7:45 when she walked to her friend's house to carpool to school." Ellen felt chills run down her spine. "Jessica, how did you handle this information?" "I wrote down everything I could remember on my order pad," Jessica continued, her hands moving expressively as she signed and spoke. "Then I called 911 from the restaurant's phone. The police didn't believe me at first. They thought maybe I had misunderstood what I'd seen." The camera operators were now completely focused on Jessica, understanding they were witnessing something that transcended typical heroism. "But I insisted, and finally they agreed to increase patrols around Lincoln Elementary the next morning," Jessica said. At exactly 7:45 a.m., police officers watched as those 4 people approached Sophie Martinez as she walked down Maple Street. They had a van, rope, everything they'd discussed. Ellen stood up slowly, her mind reeling with the implications of what Jessica had just shared. "They arrested them. All 4 of them," Jessica nodded. "The police said it was one of the most well-planned kidnapping attempts they'd ever encountered. If I hadn't seen what they were saying, if I hadn't been able to read their lips when they thought no one could hear them, Sophie would have disappeared." That's when Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. She walked to center stage and called out to her production team. "Is the Martinez family here today?" From the backstage area, a family of 4 emerged, 2 parents and 2 children, including an 8-year-old girl with bright brown eyes and a radiant smile. The girl was holding a large handmade card covered in colorful drawings. "This is Sophie Martinez," Ellen announced as the studio erupted in applause. "And this is the family whose daughter is safe today." Because Jessica noticed what others couldn't. Sophie immediately ran toward Jessica with pure joy. The reunion was beautiful and immediate. The little girl threw her arms around Jessica, who knelt down to hug her back. "Miss Jessica," Sophie said, looking up at her with adoration. "Mommy and Daddy told me you're my guardian angel. They said you save me from bad people because you have special powers." Jessica laughed through tears that had begun flowing. "Not special powers, sweetie. Just special eyes that notice things differently." Mrs. Martinez approached with her own tears flowing. "Jessica, we owe you everything. Our daughter, our family, our peace of mind. It all exists because you saw danger when others couldn't. You turned what some people might see as a disability into a superpower." Mr. Martinez nodded emphatically. "The police told us that those men had been planning this for weeks. They'd studied Sophie's routine, knew exactly when she'd be alone and vulnerable. Without your intervention, we might never have seen our daughter again." Ellen, who had remained composed through thousands of emotional moments on her show, found herself openly sobbing. This wasn't just about crime prevention or heroism. This was about the incredible ways that human differences, often seen as limitations, could become extraordinary strengths. "Jessica," Ellen said, stepping closer to the group, "you didn't just save Sophie. You proved that what makes you different makes you powerful." Sophie held up the card she'd brought. "I made this for Miss Jessica. It's a picture of her with superhero eyes that can see everything." Jessica looked at the drawing and smiled. The picture showed her with exaggerated eyes shooting beams of light, surrounded by hearts and flowers. At the bottom, in a child's careful handwriting, it read, "Thank you for seeing the bad guys, Miss Jessica. You are my hero." Ellen made another unprecedented decision. She walked to her desk and wrote out a check, returning to the group with a gift that would change Jessica's life. "Jessica, this is for you," Ellen said, handing her a check for $50,000. "For whatever you need, whatever dreams you want to pursue. But more than that, I want to start something new, the Jessica Chen Foundation for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Crime Prevention Training." Jessica looked at the check with amazement. "Ellen, I don't need money for doing what anyone would do." "But not anyone could do what you did," Ellen replied. "Your ability to read lips saved a child's life. Police departments across the country need to learn from you. to understand how the deaf and hard of hearing community sees the world differently. Ellen reached into her jacket and pulled out her personal business card. "This has my direct number," she said, pressing it into Jessica's hand. "Because what you did proves that diversity isn't just about inclusion, it's about the unique strengths that different perspectives bring to keeping all of us safe." As the episode concluded, Ellen addressed her audience with words that would become the Foundation's mission. "Today we learned that what society sometimes sees as a limitation can actually be a superpower. Jessica Chen's deafness didn't prevent her from saving a life. It's exactly what enabled her to do it. She saw what hearing people missed because she sees the world in a way that the rest of us can learn from." The episode aired exactly as it happened, becoming the most watched segment about disability awareness in television history. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Police departments across the country began reaching out to deaf and hard of hearing community organizations to explore new approaches to crime prevention and witness training. The Jessica Chen Foundation, established with Ellen's donation, has since trained over 200 law enforcement agencies in working with deaf and hard of hearing witnesses and community members. Jessica became a consultant for police departments, teaching officers how lip reading and visual awareness can provide crucial information in criminal investigations. Jessica's story sparked a broader conversation about the unique capabilities that people with disabilities bring to public safety. Several police departments have established formal partnerships with deaf community organizations, recognizing that different ways of perceiving the world can uncover crimes that might otherwise go unnoticed. 6 months after her Ellen appearance, Jessica returned to the show with an update that amazed everyone. She had been hired by the FBI as a consultant on cases involving surveillance and witness testimony. Her ability to read lips from security camera footage had helped solve multiple cases where traditional audio evidence was unavailable. "People used to feel sorry for me because I couldn't hear," Jessica told Ellen during her return visit. "Now they're amazed by what I can see. The difference isn't in my ears, it's in how society chooses to value what I bring to the table." Sophie Martinez and her family maintain a close relationship with Jessica, considering her an honorary family member. Sophie has started learning sign language and wants to become a police officer when she grows up, inspired by Jessica's example of using unique abilities to help others. The restaurant where Jessica works, Enzo's, has become a training site for other businesses wanting to better serve deaf and hard of hearing customers. The owner says that Jessica's heroism brought attention to how valuable deaf employees can be, not despite their deafness, but because of the unique perspectives it provides. Ellen keeps a copy of Sophie's drawing on her desk, Jessica with superhero eyes surrounded by hearts and gratitude. Next to it sits a photo from their reunion, showing Jessica hugging Sophie while both their families look on with joy and amazement. The handmade card Sophie brought that day is now displayed at the National Museum of American History as part of an exhibit on heroism and the strength found in human diversity. It serves as a reminder that superpowers don't always come from extraordinary abilities. Sometimes they come from extraordinary applications of the abilities we already have. Today, Jessica Chen continues her work at Enzo's restaurant while also serving as a national advocate for deaf and hard of hearing crime prevention. She speaks at conferences, trains law enforcement agencies, and works with the FBI on cases where her unique skills can make the difference between solving crimes and letting criminals escape justice. The 4 men who planned to kidnap Sophie were convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. During their trial, Jessica's testimony was crucial, and the judge commended her not just for her courage, but for the unique observational skills that made their conviction possible. Mrs. Martinez often says that Jessica taught their family to see disabilities as differences rather than deficits. Jessica didn't overcome her deafness to save Sophie, she explains. She used her deafness to save Sophie. There's a huge difference, and it's a difference that could change how we see everyone who experiences the world differently than we do. Because sometimes what society calls a disability is actually a different kind of ability, waiting to be recognized and valued. Sometimes the people we think need the most help are actually the ones with the most to offer. And sometimes it takes a young woman reading lips in a restaurant to remind us that the most important conversations are often the ones people think no one else can hear. Jessica's story continues to inspire deaf and hard of hearing individuals around the world. proving that their unique perspectives aren't obstacles to overcome, but strengths to celebrate. In a world that often focuses on what people can't do, Jessica Chen showed us the extraordinary power of what they can.